Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. It's time for the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to reporters, writers, editors, try and get some insight and inside as to what's going on in the Bronx and in our city. And in our second segment, we're going to talk to how many movie theaters are in the Bronx? Who knows? Two. There's one over there in Bay Plaza, and the other one is a little one, a film studio in on City Island. So we're going to talk to proprietor of that and find out about those movies. But right now, let's talk about real life in New York City. Let's welcome the transportation reporter for Gothamist WNYC, our buddy Steve Neesen. Nice to see you, Stephen.
Thanks for having me back.
And just to let people know, he's in the WNYC studio right now, and that's a nice thing. So as I said to you when you logged in, this is a hell of a time to be a transportation reporter. You responded you were kind of surprised that congestion pricing actually happened. Why don't we start there? What's the surprise?
Well, it's just amazing following it. This, has been in the works since 2019. There were so many twists and turns, lawsuits, pauses. And then just last Friday, a judge in New Jersey was asked to halt the program, at least temporarily. And it was really up in the air. It could have gone either way. He was behind closed doors with lawyers for 4 hours, and we were just waiting and waiting for a final determination of whether this thing can actually start Sunday, in the early hours, just 12:01 a.m. And he finally came back and said, it's clear, we can go forward with it. And it was just like people were still waiting, not quite sure whether to celebrate because there have been so many pauses. You remember Hochul paused it at the very last minute in June, but it happened, and it is in effect at this very moment.
At this very moment, and it's funny that you say that. Nobody knew whether to cheer or not to cheer, but in fact, I don't know. It seems to be going well. Well, one more thing about the legal challenges. Apparently, there are still legal challenges out there. Do they have any merit? Are you concerned that something might change this?
Anything can happen. There's a lawsuit out in Hempstead, Long Island,
Right.
That's still to be heard. So there's always more challenges. But I mean, it's survived a New York challenge. It's survived a New Jersey challenge. And each time, a judge sets a precedent, and they essentially said it's clear to go. They followed all the rules.
Do you have a sense? Are you hearing anything? Because as I mentioned to you, we have some video. Now we're recording this Tuesday, the 7th. And so this will air beginning the 9th. So I guess anything could change. So we do have some video from today. But do you have a sense, ears to the ground at how it's going at the moment?
I mean, I was out talking to drivers Monday morning, and I met a truck driver even Monday morning, and it was a little bit snowy, you'll remember. So perhaps there are fewer drivers on the road, but he's a truck driver. He's out there every day. And he told me he crossed the Queensboro Bridge that morning, and he has never seen traffic like that. It was night and day.
Meaning traffic, meaning less traffic.
There was less traffic.
Right.
He said, I am loving congestion pricing. His company's paying the toll, and he's getting where he needs to go faster. Wow. I was out this morning, and Lower Manhattan, there was less traffic. That's anecdotally speaking, but Tuesday morning, less traffic. One of my colleagues took a bus from New Jersey. He said his bus never got to Port Authority faster than it did after congestion pricing.
The thing about this is they were supposed to collect $15 billion, and that money to go to improve mass transit, the buses, the subways, and even the commuter rails, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of suspicion, I guess for good reason, from people to say, is that money really going to go there? Are we really going to get safer trains, better trains? Improve bus service, maybe buses that don't pollute quite as much. It's hard to say what else. Is that a concern that's out there? I'm assuming that people like you will be following that pretty closely.
Well, I think the bigger concern there, I have heard people say that, but written into the congestion pricing law is that all of the money from the tolls has to go toward transit improvements in a so-called lockbox. That said, of course, Governor Cuomo broke a lockbox on a separate set of funds when there was a shortfall. So, of course, I guess anything can happen. I think the bigger concern, though, is will the MTA spend the money wisely? Will the improvements happen the way that as quickly as they're supposed to? Will, of course, projects always have cost overruns and there's delays for unseen reasons. But in like the very recent era, as in like the last couple years, the MTA's construction department has turned a corner, so to speak, and has begun completing its projects, that it starts on time, on budget. They have all these new, sort of procurement methods, whatever, ways to spend money slightly more wisely than in the past. The boondoggle of East Side Access or the Second Avenue subway, those massive cost overruns. Stuff is still expensive, no question about it. But I think they are spending the money slightly better than they have in the past. But of course,
And
remains to
we'll
be seen.
and we'll find out exactly what happens over the course of time. I do want to show this footage. So this was shot Tuesday, the 7th at 12 noon on 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. We want to credit our buddy Ed Conde Garcia from welcome to the Bronx.com for providing this footage. He was downtown. Let's look at it, and then I'll tell you anecdotally what he told me about his trip this morning. So here it is. There it is, 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. And you know what was very, very, very revealing to me is that all you saw were buses and a couple of trucks. Now, there were some cars, as the footage went on, there were some cars. Here's what he told me. He rides his bicycle from the South Bronx to Hell's Kitchen. Which is,
Long
it's
ride.
a 7-mile ride, which for a bike rider is not that much. But when there's real traffic, it's a much longer ride. He said, coming down Fifth Avenue, which is one of the routes he goes before he goes through the park and goes across town, like by the museum at 82nd Street, he said, I've never seen anything like it. I was just riding straight down Fifth Avenue. And normally I got to avoid cars and buses and people stopping and everything, but things were moving. So here's I want to give you an anecdote that I saw on, I forget which channel, one of the news channels. They interviewed a musician who plays on Broadway, and she lived in the city, and she and her husband got a house in Hastings, which is not that far up. And she said that she would take the train to work, get on the Metro North to work, which is not a problem. But the problem is at 10:30 at night when the show is over, she's got to get back on the train and come back. And at COVID, they took trains off. They had many fewer trains. And so her next train would be at 11:44. She'd have to sit around for an hour and a half or an hour and 20 minutes before she gets on the train and not get home till 12:30 or 1 o'clock. So now she still drives her car into Midtown and finds a place to park, pays for the parking. So my question is, are they going to go back and put more trains out so that people who want to take the trains, and that's not 11:30 at night in New York City, is not, you can go to a Knicks game and need an 11:30 train to get back to the suburbs. If you want it to make sense, you got to add the trains. I mean, that's my point. You're not disagreeing, I'm assuming.
It's true. And actually, one of the biggest complaints from folks who are maybe concerned about the toll is that, in London, when they launched their congestion pricing program, they added thousands of more buses, several hundred, nearly 1,000 more buses. So it would really encourage people to take public transit. They'd have the buses there. And there was a lot of push to do that in the city, especially, even those commuter buses that cost a little bit more, but they are a fast way to get from, South Brooklyn or the Bronx even to Lower Manhattan. And the MTA kind of balked on it, and they did agree eventually to add some more buses, but they're not even in effect now. It won't be in effect until the spring. So it doesn't quite coincide with the launch of congestion pricing like folks were hoping. And it's true, they did cut some service, but they've also increased service on at least the Long Island Railroad since, since the new terminal, Grand Central Madison opened. So there are more trains for Long Island Railroad, but Metro North, maybe they need to increase the
I
service.
think they're going to need to do that. And the other thing I heard also, again, this is all anecdotally, 2 days into congestion pricing, somebody I know who takes the train said to me, the trains are infinitely more crowded. And if that's the case, we're going to need more trains, and that I guess is part of this whole process. One of the things which you, I'm sure, know about, which happened right at the same time at midnight, Sunday night or Monday morning, was that the MTA raised tolls on the Hudson River crossings. Now, if we didn't have
The Port Authority
the
did.
Port Authority did, that's right. I'm sorry. But if we didn't have congestion pricing, that would have been a lead story. But that's further incentive for people in New Jersey to get out of their cars and figure out a way to do it mass transit wise.
Absolutely. And New Jersey is not adding any more train service.
They're not.
No. I mean,
Well, they probably won't out of stubbornness because they want congestion pricing to fail. But I'm wondering if over time, they would do that. Now, the congestion pricing, the $9 is going to go up, right, over a period of time.
that's right. Originally, they'd wanted $15, and Hochul said, she said, I heard complaints it's going to hurt businesses, or people aren't going to come to the city if it's 15, so we'll start at 9. And over the next couple of years, it'll eventually go up to 12, and then by the year 2031, it'll be the full $15 again.
Well, let's hope that we get enough transit improvements in our system so that people will say, well, it doesn't matter. And I got to tell you, for me, we would go down and maybe if I went to a Knick game, sometimes I would take my car and park somewhere. And now I certainly wouldn't do that. It costs the high price of a Ranger game, and it costs a lot more. We just got a few seconds left. Steve, summary, when should we check back with you? Give it a couple of months. What do you think is going to happen? Like, what do we need to know?
Well, give it another week or so. Let's see what the traffic numbers are. The MTA anticipates traffic will go down by 10%. So I'm curious to see where traffic is going to go. But also, like you mentioned, there could be some increases at certain subway stations. So, for example, in Upper Manhattan, are people crossing the GW Bridge and taking the train more? That's something to look forward to.
And one other thing real quick, because we do got to go, is people in neighborhoods are very concerned about cars parking in their neighborhoods. I wonder if we're going to get more residential permits than we've ever had in New York City. Certainly people in North Bronx neighborhoods are concerned about that as well. Listen, Steve Neesen, you're the best, man. And give a hug to all my buddies over there at Gothamist, WNYC. We're going to keep reading everything you write, especially now. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Great. We're going to take a short break. And as I said, when we come back, one of the 2 movie theaters in the Bronx, one of them on City Island. Don't go away. Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. I'm always thrilled to be out on City Island. And as you may or may not know, there's only 2 movie theaters in the Bronx. once the theater closed at 161st Street. Bay Plaza is the only traditional theater, but we have a beautiful film and movie studio on City Island. It is called Cinema on the Sound, and the manager is Jerry Landi, and Jerry joins us right now. Nice to see you, Jerry.
Great to see you. Always great to see you, Gary.
You have some films coming up in January, right?
Yeah, the one thing I really want to promote is we're actually doing a silent film. It's an old experimental film with musical track being played live by a musician in the cinema. So we're going to be showing the movie, and we're going to have a musician playing the soundtrack live. So
Wow.
I've been trying to get somebody to do this for a long time. It's going to be on January 18th at the cinema. You could go to ticketleap.com, Cinema on the Sound, and get tickets ahead of time. But I'm looking forward to this because it's a real old experimental Japanese film, and the music is very eerie. So we had a test run the other day, and it was a lot of fun. So
Wow.
that's the big for January.
What kind of music? Like, is somebody playing a guitar?
It's a guy who does electronic music. He does
with the
keyboards and everything.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Well,
that's like old school, stuff.
No, that's pretty exciting. I mean, I never thought about it, but the silent movies, they may have had musicians. I guess they did have musicians in the theater.
Well, a couple of years ago, I went to the Seattle Film Festival, and there was a movie. It said Unknown, and the story was it was an old Lon Chaney movie called Unknown. They found it in the tent, but the thing is, they had a live orchestra in the movie theater playing with a bar cart. So I went, my wife went somewhere else, and I went by myself. I sat there, and there was a bar cart coming up and down, and a full orchestra playing the soundtrack to the movie. It was one of these things I said, well, this is the way it was in the early cinema. This is the way they did it. So what I'm trying to do is, a couple of people approached me, but then there's, you know how it is, Gary. Sometimes there's no follow through. But this guy, Jeff, came up to me during one of my screenings and said, would you be interested in doing this? And I was like, oh, yeah. I've been trying to do it for a long time. So
that really sounds exciting. What reveals to me is that you're able to find these films, and you've got a whole lineup of films. How do you find these films? I guess you're part of a culture that gets into these independent movies and kind of offbeat sort of things, if I can call it that.
Yeah, I kind of, if you're a fan of my movies, you see where I get my inspiration from was from these offbeat movies, these movies that kind of fell through the cracks of society, but video brought them back. So my mission statement with the cinema was to have independent filmmakers come and screen their stuff, because after they do the film festival runs, they really have no outlet if they don't have distribution.
Right.
So my whole thing was get these people into my cinema, show their films, and introduce people to films that I grew up on that inspired me. And it's funny, we do this thing called Wacky Wednesdays, where I show all these crazy movies. And in the beginning, I was like, who's going to go for this? But it's amazing. We get people from all ages showing up. That most of my Wacky Wednesday audience are over 50. And they're watching these crazy movies from the 60s and 70s, and they're just having a grand old time.
Wow. That's pretty exciting. So you just kind of find the films.
I own a lot of them. Oh yeah,
you own a lot of them.
Yeah,
Wow.
I have a giant library.
Well, you were talking and sent us a copy of something called the Bronx Lore.
Yes.
And you sent us a trailer for what is the Bronx Lore? Because we'll show that trailer. No problem.
Bronx Lore is my new film, which I'm now entering into film festivals. It's I would like to. I always wanted to do an anthology film with stories that took place in the Bronx. And since I make horror movies, I said, well, let me do like horror movies in the Bronx and make an anthology film and have it Bronx Lore, lore meaning, legend and all of this stuff and the things that people talk about in the shadows and the stories that are passed down. So we made this film, shot all over the Bronx. 2 of the episodes were shot on City Island. And we won an award. We went into our first film festival and won an award out in Buffalo. And the audience loved it. And they loved the fact that somebody once said that the people in my movies have fake Bronx accents.
Fake Bronx accents?
Yeah.
I don't
was
know
like,
about you, Jerry. You got it. You're legit, man. I don't know that
I
you
don't have an
are.
accent,
Or-
Gary. Everybody else does. I don't know.
oh, okay.
But you could tell when you go to certain places, people say, wow, you're from the Bronx or you're from New York City.
Yeah, of course.
So I wanted to make a movie that kind of reflected the stories of the Bronx.
So we're good now. When is that going to be shown at the cinema on the?
Well,
side?
we're putting it into the festival. The cinema, I think we showed it in the beginning. We did a test screening before I sent it out. I may show it again in the future. I'll advertise it. You could go to my Instagram site and Facebook, Jerry Landi. I promote all the stuff that goes on.
All this stuff.
And run the
All right.
sound.
Well, let's all take a look. This is the trailer for Bronx Lore by a filmmaker, studio film theater manager, Jerry Landi. And here we go.
How you doing? Welcome to the Bronx. A lot of stories in the Bronx. Some good, some bad, some happy, some sad. But on this tape, they're all just weird.
Children. You will kill them all. Kill all the children. All the children.
Now I'm scared. Now I'm actually. That was unbelievable.
I crack myself up sometimes.
that is unbelievable. Now, how long a film actually is it? I mean, we got 2 minutes out of there, but how long a film is it?
I think it runs like an hour and 25
Wow.
minutes, something like that. Yeah, it's multiple stories. The last one, Shriek of the Woodlouse, is which is the star is right here. He's a little woodlouse, a pill bug. You know what pill bugs are.
So no, what are you telling
Pill bugs
me?
are the ones that when you hit them, they roll up in a ball and they roly polies. We used to call them in the Bronx.
Right.
So it's basically about a mutated roly poly that goes through city. So
A mutated roly poly. You really have quite an imagination. Just talk to me about the filming of it and the shooting of it. I mean, the number of shots in there, that it looks like a ton of filming.
Yeah, it's four different stories, so it's 4 different shoots with all different locations for each one. I worked on that for a long time. We got lucky that one of the main locations on here at City Island, they were about to knock down a building. And the guy said, "You want to come and take a look at it? Are you looking for anything?" I said, "I'm looking for a lab for a mad scientist who's creating a giant bug." So he goes, "Oh, you're gonna love it." So we went into this warehouse, and the warehouse just had tons of equipment and old radios and old everything. So we said, "Well, when can we get in?" He goes, "You can come in tomorrow." We went in there. We built a lab out of all of this equipment from years and years of storage on City Island. And when my DP walked into the set, he goes, what did you, how'd you, this is great. So yeah, it's the thing about me early in my career, when I would screen my movies, I would raise money and give it to an organization. So I helped the veterans in BronxNet. They needed a heating system. Bronx Bigfoot money went to help them. So when I need a location, people are very willing to give it to me because I'm willing to give back, and that's something you really don't see these days.
A lot of it, yeah. I just want to get back to the what you said at the beginning of that is that there was a building or a warehouse that comes down. Seems to me when that happens and you can get in there, that becomes a perfect set for anything you want to do, because of course if it's coming down, you can have your way with it, but also it has that spooky horror kind of look.
That happened to me twice. Once we got to destroy the house. Yeah, they go, we're going to knock this house down tomorrow. Do you have a script? So I go, not tomorrow. It was about a week he gave me. I'm sorry.
Right.
I said, could you do it? I go, I have a script. I can get it together. And we basically destroyed this house. And that short is in Bronx Lore. It's the one with the human sacrifice. We spray painted the walls. We had blood splattering, eyeballs bouncing off the wall. It was just insane.
That is pretty insane. Talk to me about the audience. People just you have regulars who come in, or do you have people who just try it out? I mean, it's a small theater and it's very, very cozy, so to speak.
I have my hardcore audience that comes on Wednesday and Saturday nights. We get a lot of people who are curious about it and show up and go, wow, this is really cool. Because it's kind of like hidden away on City Island, and even people in City Island. So I don't know you had a movie theater out here. Except, well,
nobody knows.
There's only 2 in the Bronx. Like, how could you miss that?
So let's just do the promotion. So it's 270 City Island Avenue. You can see the black and white sign right out there, Cinema on the Sound. And I will say also you can get a nice cup of coffee next door at Clipper Coffee.
Yes.
And so talk to me about January 18th again. We just got about 60 seconds. What's coming up the 18th that people should know about?
So that we're going to do a silent movie. I think it's called The Edge of Madness or Page of Madness, and we're going to have a live musician playing music while the movie is showing up on the screen. And like I said, this is old school stuff. I always wanted to do this. So if you're around January 18th, 7 p.m., Cinema on the Sound, you can buy tickets at the door. Come.
Yeah, it sounds great, and I have to tell you, all artists in the Bronx are highly valued and highly needed, and you are one. And you've opened up a theater where we don't go to any movie theaters, and so congratulations, Jerry Landi. I don't know if I'm bold enough to see some of those horror movies, but maybe I'll stop by one day.
Come see Hobo with a Shotgun.
Hobo. Maybe I am the hobo with a shotgun. You never know.
You're too good looking. You're not a hobo.
So much, and I'm glad we got it done. And Cinema on the Sound, and that will do it for the Bronx Buzz for this evening. We thank Steve Neesen. And if the curtain don't fall and the creek don't rise in one of Jerry's movies, I'll be back next week.